Hello, 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 hello. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. We are back. I always forget to turn off the stupid screen. Um, Holy smokes. Does my hair look longer? Do I look way more stressed? I don't know. It has been a crazy couple 2 weeks, folks. It happened. We missed the life of the germ. What can you do? What can you do? This was truly an exception. Truly. I'll see if it happens again, but unless I'm on some vacation or something, like I can't foresee it happening again. So I've kind of given myself some grace here because I know that this I had like three big presentations in the past couple of weeks, and like two out of the three are done, and then I got one on Wednesday, and then I'm chilling probably forever for forever. Like there'll be ups and downs, but I don't know if it'll ever get to that extent again. So with all that being said, I mean, good God, it was yeah, that was a push for sure. I um finally found some time. Um I I actually worked from home today, which was like kind of electric. I I started the morning like on my little enclosed porch, and it got a little chilly, like my hand I was typing and my hands started getting cold, so I went inside. And then literally I'm just reading papers for like hours, just on my couch. And all of a sudden I feel like only scientists can relate to this because it's just like so geeky and like weird and just like it's indescribable though, because you're like you're like reading all these papers. I printed literally like six papers off because I'm like, basically in science there's this really cool thing where so you pick up a paper from like 2020 and it'll cite papers from like, obviously it can't cite papers like in the future because it's just, like it was published in 2020, so it's not going to cite a paper from 2024 because that paper didn't exist. But like back, if it'll keep backing up, right? And what I realized, this really cool tactic that I did was like, I was trying to go back to like the origins of my field, right? So what I did was I like, you can get it, you can keep reading the introductions and that'll kind of set you up for like what's known in the field when that paper was published. And I picked up a paper from like, I don't know, it was probably 2020, and it like cited one from like 2015. And then I printed that one off, went on it. I'm like, they're still citing one that says they found these findings. Keep going. I think I went back like four or five papers. I got to like, I think I got to like 2010. And finally the introduction was like, we hypothesize X, and in this paper we support it with this evidence. And I was like, yes. And then like basically every paper after that would like add a little something, right? Because you can't publish if it's the same finding as like the previous papers, right? So and then slowly I'm like reading all these stories and they're compounding, and all of a sudden I get to this point where I'm like thinking about how this relates to my project, and I'm like, "Oh my god." And I have like literally the best idea I think I've ever had as a PhD student. I'm gonna pull it out quick. One second. Okay, basically, wait, I want to make sure this is recording. Okay, sweet. Basically, I have this notebook. It's just like, and I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm not even a drawer, but like that light bulb, I mean, that's fire. I mean, you can't lie. Like this notebook is just like, it's just electric. Like just ideas, very simple, nothing crazy. And just imagine me, literally 9 a.m. this morning till like 12:31 at 1 p.m. And all of a sudden I'm like, I gotta jot this down. And I'm just like, brrr, like literally two or three pages of just like ideas. And like, I'm like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And all of a sudden I'm like, I think I'm gonna like kind of go crazy in lab and just like get a lot of this stuff done. So I'm like really excited. That was like It's just so hard as a grad student with when you have so much other stuff going on to like I don't know. I'm the kind of guy that just I love to work in chunks, right? And it's like people are always like, "Oh, read a paper with you're incubating for 20 minutes, pick up a paper." It's like it's so fragmented that it's just like, okay, I pick up a paper for 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then you put it down, and then maybe you don't touch it again for like another 3, 4 days. And by then you already forget what it was. Whereas today, like, maybe I just need to set aside one day a month where I just like sit down and I'm like, what do I want to go over? And then just like literally 4 hours today, I was just like going over it and it was just like exponential growth. Like I just feel like everything was so cloudy, and now that I read all this, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what I'm gonna do, and it's like it's great. But yeah, just overall really good day. Really weird working from home, and I got like lunch with a friend. Shout out Emily for the one time, and then after that, like I went back to lab at like 4. It was like the weirdest day ever. And then I left lab at 7. So I'm like, I mean, I got a full day in, but I was like, what in the world is like, and now I walk outside and it's dark. I feel like I literally blinked today and like the day was over. It was crazy. Like, and that's a sign that I just, like I really enjoy. That's probably my favorite part about science is just reading papers and like applying those ideas to like what you want to do and test in lab is like that's like so cool. Because there's just so much novelty in these papers, and then you can apply that novelty to like one that to your idea, and it's just so cool to see like I don't know, collaboration be played out without the need for like verbal discussion, right? It's just like I read something and then I'm going to implement it, and those authors have no idea that I like use them as a resource. You know, it's just like such a cool way of going about it. I don't know. But anyways, I'm like definitely wired right now. I can't lie, I'm really happy it's Friday tomorrow. I like the past couple weeks, like I said, have just burned me to the ground, and I'm fine. I'm still kind of like in emergency mode because I got these big presentations, but I think like after this, I need like a good long weekend of like nothing, like, and I'm definitely gonna like set myself up to do that. But um, anyways, a lot of rambling, but definitely noted. I needed to, update you guys on what I was up to these past couple weeks, and it honestly feels like forever since I picked this thing up, and um, I just think science has been my life like the past 2 weeks. So I'm like, podcast 2 weeks ago. Did I really record that? It says I uploaded it 12 days ago. I'm like, that it feels like years ago since I did this. It just so odd, such an odd feeling, but. Um, Wisdom of the Week. Yeah, as you can tell, it's still the same album. Like I haven't had any time to do anything. But science, which, I'm not really complaining about. Like it's pretty electric. But uh, um Wisdom of the Week. Monsters. And this is kind of a cool analogy I thought of. I like the term monsters because it's like it's not a term that you hear in like adulthood very much, but I don't know why I called it adulthood, but you guys know what I mean. It's like it's this idea that like I use it as the reference to like when you're a kid, right? And like everyone had that like thought at one time when you're a kid. And if you put in the comment section you didn't, like I'm gonna call cap on that. I don't buy it because whether you watch a horror movie or honestly you're just a kid and you're scared of stuff, right? Like that's just natural. And um yeah, the whole monsters under the bed thing, like everyone had it, or in the closet. I got a closet right here. Like everyone had it, and I think like why I bring this up is because it's kind of like my analogy of it. I forget what episode I talked about it. I think it was Scare Fear. That was the episode. Um, but basically like how it morphs into your worst fears. Like kind of playing off of that, I think the monster really doesn't go away as you get older. And it's really weird. And I think I always thought like, and now looking back, I'm like monsters under the bed, like monsters in the closet. Like it's so childish. Like of course, like you go check, nothing's there, right? It's like, but really the monster never goes away. And like it's funny because the monster morphs into things that you continue to find as childish, right, as you go on. And I think this is such like the cool part of life that like everyone older than me is always like you have it so much easier than like when you're this age, right? And it's just like a constant loop. Like when you like all the high schoolers when you're in middle school will be like, dude, you don't know how easy you have it. And then like when you get to my stage, it's like I'm a single dude right now, so it's like, dude, like you don't know how easy you have it, like not having these other obligations. And then like when you get in a relationship, it's like the married people with kids will be like, dude, you don't understand how easy it is like not to have kids, and it just like keeps going, right? And it's like I think it's not to say that like kids are monsters. I mean, I feel like some people would definitely agree that they maybe are, but in like a joking way, let's be civil here. I mean, but like I think you get what I'm getting at. Like I think the monsters are like the anxieties, the stressors, and instead when you're a kid, it's so simple, right? And I wish it was that. I wish it was that simple. And but this is the thing that I think I want to get across that maybe it is that simple, right? Because think about the strategy you had as a kid when there were monsters, when you thought like there were monsters under your bed, right? Okay. Strategy one, you were too scared to actually look yourself. So what do? You run to mom, you run to dad, and you go, there's a monster under my bed. And what does your mom and dad say? Would they go, oh, like they come on now. There's no monsters under your bed. Let's go see, right? And you go under, you check. They check, and you're like really, you're really nervous. And they look, and they're like, "There's nothing here." And then they'll bring you, and you check, and you're like, "Oh, thank God, there's nothing there." And sort of like after that, maybe you have this repeating thought a couple times, but then maybe the next time you grow enough courage to just do it yourself and check, and you're like, okay, there's nothing there, right? And then you watch some scary movie where there actually is something there, and then you go to bed that night when you're like literally my age, and you're like, oh my god, and you're like, oh my god, is it back? But like overall, it's like, okay, we get the point. But I think the same strategies you employ to counter and overcome those fears, you can also use to overcome the fears of today, right? So whatever those fears may be, I think like ultimately everyone has these stressors, things they care about, things they want to do well in, and it's like um, a lot of those stressors, some of those can even turn to fears, like fears of like messing up or not, giving the most perfect whatever, it's like, and but really you can employ the same strategies, right? Like I think it's like, how would you compare it? I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, I mean, I feel like an exam is always the thing that comes to my mind because it's just kind of easy. Like it's an easy example. So let's say like you have a fear of like failing an exam, right? And this is the fear of like a college student, right? Like you're no longer a kid where you fear the monster, but the monster is now morphed into this exam that you care a lot about and you don't want to see it. You don't want to see a bad grade get returned to you, right? So what do you do to counter that, right? You ask for help, right? You're reaching out to other students, which I sure as hell did a lot of collaborating with other students. That was incredibly helpful. People, especially on any university, I can guarantee there's someone smarter than you. And it's just like if you can find those people and like ask them for help, whether that be like students, professors, whatever. I mean, that is just the ticket to get the A. Like it's I mean, granted, you got to put in the work, but if there's questions, like you can ask them and they'll help you, right? Or two, like I said when you get enough courage, well, in this case, it's a little bit different, but with the monsters, eventually you gain enough courage to just do it yourself, right? So the alternative is just you take this load on and you're like, I want to do well on this exam. I'm going to put the time in and I don't care. I don't care how much time it takes. I don't care how much I'm going to suffer. I'm going to get through it and I'm going to get the result I'm looking for, right? And the same thing is true as you go on. Like I think like I don't know. I think there comes a point when you look at the closet and you're like, yeah, a monster might be behind that door. And it's like, I don't know, part of you thinks like, okay, if I open that door and there is a monster behind the door, what am I even going to do about it? You know, it's like what am I going to do? Like, okay, it's going to get me, whatever. You know, it's like and I think it's the same for this kind of stuff. Like in terms of in terms of quote unquote failure, I don't know. I watched classic like Kobe YouTube video came up. This like 4 minute TV host was like interviewing him, and then she said something about failure, and she's like, how do you deal with failure? And he's like, there's no failing, like you can't fail. And everyone in the crowd like laughed, which I just think is so funny because I feel like he was so like, I'm sure like philosophers thought of this too, but like back in time, and he's just kind of like the next generation to like do it. But it was just like it just felt like such like refreshing forward thinking because he was so dead serious. He didn't even smile. He was just like, no, I'm serious. Like there is no such thing as failure. And it was just like such a cool thing to hear. Like because he was like, okay, say whatever you do, you get a setback, but then that happens on Monday, and then Tuesday you come back in and you reflect on that setback, and then you document it, and then you're back at it again, knowing that you won't make that mistake again, right? And it's just like so cool because the act of you coming in on Tuesday means that there's no failing because you're not failing because you're continuing to go on. A failure would you be you go in on Monday, you stop and you quit your job. That's a fail, right? I mean, that's just miserable. But like when you come in the next day, you're still grinding. There's no failure is termination, right? If there's no termination, you haven't failed, right? Which I think is what he was kind of getting at. And it's the same thing with these kind of things. Like I don't know, say the monster does get you, right? Whatever that monster is. If you wake up the next day and you get after it the next day, and then say the monster gets you that day, but eventually you keep going and going and going, and eventually like the monster doesn't get you. It's like by you just going every time, like you can't really fail. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no the monster getting you isn't failing. That was merely just the attempt, right? And I think I've brought this up in other episodes before, but I like to, like I said in other episodes, like I like to phrase these things in different ways because I think there's different perspectives and different ways to look at these things. And I think I thought of this monster analogy and I thought it was kind of cool because, yeah, like I said, like you don't hear that word thrown around anymore, but really, monster in adulthood is just like a synonym of anxiety, fear, stress, like honestly a lot like care. Honestly, a lot of the things that I stress about or fear, I care a hell of a lot about. Like I really care a lot about it. Um like my career for example, like I fear and I stress a lot about the things that go on day to day in my job because I just care about it so much, and it's like um I think ultimately when you care about something, it's impossible not to stress about it. But I do think it's impossible. I do think it's possible not to fear it, right? I think again, Kobe talked about this in his interview, but he was like, if you if you play scared, there's no way you can perform at your best, right? Um, but if you're not honestly, and this can curb a lot of the stress too. If you're not so worried about the the outcome and you just play and you just go in the moment and you're not feeling anything else, that suddenly that fear of failure disappears, that stress disappears, and it's just like you, and for me, in the lab it's just me and my pipettes. Nothing else matters. No one else exists in the world. It's just me and my pipettes, and like what, just I don't know, the time, watching the time just zoom by because I'm so locked in and just like at one with my craft. And like Kobe's such a good example of this, where it's just like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the clip where like the dude's like inbounding the ball and Kobe's like facing him and he's just so locked in, and the guy like goes like this with the ball and he literally just doesn't react. Like he's just so locked in, so not afraid of anything, of anyone, and it's just like that's it. Like if you can get to that point, and I think all of us listening to this have seen glimpses of that. Like, if you can get to that point where that monster is just, it's nothing. Like, the monster doesn't even exist. And you get to this point where you don't even have to check under the bed because you know it's not there. And if it is, you don't even care. Like, you're just like, I don't. I don't care. I'm so tired that like I don't even care to look anymore. Like, or in the case of like real world examples, you're so locked in and focused on what you're doing that like it's like you're not even gonna bother to like think about, or like, Murphy's law. I hate when people say that. They're like, oh, like, anything that can happen will happen. It's just like, dude, like when you think about that, like, yeah, okay, it's true, right? It's a thing, right? But it's like that will eat you up inside if you're like, oh my god, I gotta make sure I don't make any mistakes, this, that. It's like, okay, yeah, like an experiment, like that's why you have controls in case like something does go wrong, or hypothesis, right? Like you think this, but you want to make sure you have some backup to know that you're actually like it's not the technique that's wrong, it's just like the phenotype you're seeing, right? That's really like complex jargon, but whatever. But it's like that kind of mindset is just so, oh, I just hate it because it's like when you try to like look out for every single mistake known to man, it's like you're looking too hard and you're gonna stumble upon some mistake that you didn't even check. And whereas opposed to someone who I'm trying to like aspire to be, like someone that's so dedicated to their craft where they're like, yeah, they recognize like part those things could come up, but they're so focused that it's like you just know those things aren't gonna happen because you're so locked in, and I think that's kind of what I wanted to get at. And I also think part of the reason like the monsters go away is like people get busy, right? Like it's like the monsters become the things that you have time to think about, right? And as a kid, you have time to think about the things that are behind the closet. Whereas like now, it's like I have other monsters to cook, right? And to murder. It's just it's not. And I'm thinking about other monsters that are coming up, and there's always going to be another monster, right? That's the other thing about life that I was talking with a friend about today. It's like, oh, I hate the mindset of like, oh, when I just get to this, it'll be, and that's me right now. I'm thinking if I just get past this, I'll be good. And it's like, yeah, it's like good to celebrate like those milestones and those really difficult things. But ultimately it's like life continues to go on. Like, and again, like this is what Kobe said in the video, but it was just like he's like Snow White, like you know, gets a husband or whatever, and it's always like, and they live happily ever after. It's like, no, that's the most cliche thing ever because he's like, life goes on, and like husband gets pissed at Snow White that's not happily ever after. You know, there's more challenges to face. There's more life to live, and it's like that's the best. I think the best way to live life is to enjoy when you're faced with those challenges, because there's very few times in life when you overcome the challenge and you're at like this peace and tranquility. Like I had this earlier this week where I finished my presentation. I'm just like I'm literally just on the moon. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. You know, it's just like the best feeling ever. But to get that feeling, you have to overcome a challenge, right? Like if you never give it yourself a challenge in your life, you would never get that feeling, right? And like that's something that you have to remember in the back of your head. Like, but again, like that only lasts so long when you overcome that challenge, right? There's always another one ahead of you that you're going to have to face, and you'll get that feeling again when you overcome it, but like you got to work to get that feeling, right? And that's why life for me is just so addictive. It's just like chasing that, you know, chasing that like peace that I get when I'm just like, oh my god, I feel like incredible right now, you know. But um yeah, thank you guys for sticking with me and being extra patient on this little week hiatus from the pod. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one. And yeah, hope you're living life and trying to have some fun while doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I catch you.